This chapter looks at a number of topics related to stress, conflict, negotiations, and ethics. And these are quite related if you think about it because stress can lead to conflict, or lapses in ethical judgment, or to lack of effective negotiations. We start off with the topic of stress, and in this chapter we see a bit of a role reversal with the characters in the sense that Atlas seems much cooler under fire and more prepared than David, and that's because his laid-back Type B personality is not as prone to the negative types of stress that exist in our environment. So we introduce the concept of stress by discussing general adaptation syndrome. This GAS model represents a three-stage reaction to stress that explains the process of getting stressed out. In the first phase, alarm, some outside stressor jolts the individual that something must be done. In animals, this is often discussed in terms of the fight or flight moment that triggers a natural reaction. So, if the reaction is flight, as when a bird is startled, they might be able to quickly and successfully flee the stressor and quickly return to a restful state having dealt with their stress. But in a more enduring stress situation, the resistance phase occurs and the body releases cortisol and draws on fat and sugar reserves to adjust to the demands of stress. This reaction is a short-term solution, but it will work for a while. But if stress continues to exist, a state of exhaustion will occur, and you will literally become stressed out. This could lead to sickness and, in extreme cases, possibly even death. A number of life events such as death of a spouse or family member can be extremely stressful. Many events that are associated with good news too, such as graduation, changing jobs, or moving can also be very stress-inducing as well. Fortunately, there are a number of steps that individuals can take to manage stress. Eating healthy is perhaps the easiest in the sense that we all have to find time to eat. Exercising, using more effective time management techniques, talking about the stress with others, getting enough sleep, and working to take a positive frame of mind can also help. Of course, dealing with the stressor head-on can also be helpful to the extent that this is possible. The next topic we tackle in this chapter is conflict, which can go hand in hand with managing stress. Conflict exists when two seemingly incompatible views collide. Conflict is commonly seen as a negative in organizations, but some conflict, especially when managed well, can be quite good. It shows that individuals feel comfortable communicating and vocalizing their views, even when they may disagree with the thoughts of others. We discuss three types of conflict in this chapter. The first type of conflict, intrapersonal, occurs when an individual is uncertain about what is expected or has a sense of inadequacy. As mentioned in a previous chapter, building self-efficacy can be useful in managing this type of conflict. Effective selection and thoughtful training can also mitigate issues surrounding intrapersonal conflict. Interpersonal conflict that occurs between two individuals is the most common form of conflict. Conflict among different groups, such as different departments or divisions in a company, or between companies, such as companies who supply the same customer, is referred to as intergroup conflict. One of the key ways to manage conflict between individuals and groups is through negotiations. President Kennedy once said, "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate." Negotiation can be an effective way to resolve conflict because it can lower your overall stress by reconciling the needs and interests of both parties. However, there are some tactics to avoid that we mention in this chapter. For example, taking the first offer made can end up selling an individual short in some cases. Letting your ego get in the way, having unrealistic expectations, getting overly emotional, and letting past negative outcomes affect the present one are also techniques associated with ineffective negotiations. There are 5 primary negotiating styles based on the personalities or preferences of the individual engaged in the negotiation. Accommodating individuals enjoy solving the other party's problems and preserving personal relationships. These individuals are good at sensing emotional states, body language, and verbal signs of other parties, but they can feel taken advantage of in situations when the other party places little emphasis on the relationship. Avoiding individuals do not like to negotiate and don't do it unless warranted. These individuals tend to defer and dodge confrontation. On the plus side, they may be perceived as tactful and diplomatic. Collaborating individuals enjoy negotiations that involve solving tough problems. These individuals are good at using negotiation to understand the concerns and interests of the other parties. The trade-off is that they can make simple negotiations into more complex ones unnecessarily at times. Competing individuals enjoy negotiations because of the potential to win something. These individuals often are very strategic and have strong negotiation instincts. However, they tend to neglect the importance of relationships. The negotiation styles of the parties involved can influence the path of the negotiation itself. Compromising individuals are eager to close the deal by doing what is fair and equal for all parties. Concessions may be made quickly in an effort to conclude the negotiation. However, sometimes this results in suboptimal outcomes. This can be advantageous in time-sensitive situations. There are 5 phases of the negotiation process. The first involves investigation to gather information about the goals of the negotiation. What are the needs of both parties? What goals can be achieved? What elements of the negotiation are valued most by the parties involved? The second step involves determining what's called a BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. For example, what's your fallback plan if negotiations fails? When your BATNA is high, you are more likely to be aggressive in your negotiations. When your BATNA is low, there is strong motivation for you to engage in mutually beneficial negotiations. The third phase of the negotiation process involves presentation of the information you've gathered in support of your position in a negotiation. Careful research, planning, and anticipation of the concerns of other parties is suggested in preparation for this stage. In the fourth phase, each party discusses their goals and seeks to get an agreement. This is the bargaining stage where each party generally gives up some things to get something else in return. The fifth and final stage involves closure. Either both parties come to some sort of agreement, or one party decides the final offer is unacceptable and they walk away from the negotiating table. And so this process is something all of us encounter in some points in our life. Atlas and David contemplate the negotiations they will have with each other to establish norms for the no-cover cafe. And they also negotiate with the owner of the space where they will rent that will serve as the location for the no-cover cafe. Understanding and thinking through these steps in advance will help create negotiations that will help you more effectively meet your goals and objectives. The final content we cover in this chapter relates to the 3 levels of moral development developed by Lawrence Kohlberg. Ideally, as individuals develop morally, they will move from level 1, which is driven more by rewards and punishment, to higher levels that relate to fulfilling one's role in society, or to the level of making decisions that go beyond social norms to a level of morality driven by ethical principles. In level 1, the pre-conventional level, moral reasoning is very egocentric in nature and ties to direct rewards and punishments. The avoidance of cheating simply for fear of getting caught would be an example of behavior based on this level of moral development. In stage 2, action is based on a what's in it for me mentality. In level 2, the conventional level, moral reasoning is a function of comparing the actions of individuals to the expectations of society. What will others think of me if I do this? Is the question individuals who operate in this stage consider. Telling a child to be a good little boy and do this or that is an example of this type of moral reasoning. In stage 4, obeying legal requirements that maintain order under the law or other social conventions is important. In other words, morality is dictated by others rather than a personal perspective on what is right or wrong. Individuals whose actions are driven by the question, is it legal, operate under this perspective. Level 3, the post-conventional level, occurs when morality is principled and based on more than simply following social rules or norms. Stage 5, for example, focuses on ideas seen in a democratic society such as voting, where a social contract exists promoting the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In the final stage, stage 6, moral reasoning is based on universal ethical principles. For example, the idea of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, would drive individual actions. Ideals are based on a deeper feeling of right and wrong rather than just reward and punishment in this stage. This can result in civil disobedience where individuals do not feel compelled to obey unjust laws. So this chapter deals with a number of issues that help you understand stress and conflict. We also explore some thoughts that can help you engage in more effective negotiations and manage ethical decisions based on a higher level of moral reasoning than simply the fear of getting caught breaking the law. My hope is that by understanding these issues, you can work to manage your stress, manage conflict, engage in effective negotiation, and make decisions based on the highest degree of moral reasoning.